Welcome everyone to the Easter Rally 2020. We're really excited to be here together with you here in Zoom. Actually, when we were planning this and we were launching this or the theme for how to prepare for the end times, and then this whole Corona thing happened, we're like, what are we going to do with Easter Rally these days? I mean, like, everybody's canceling events and everything, and shall we just cancel? And we were thinking, no, we can't just cancel this event because, hey, this Corona thing is actually just intensifying or showing that this is a topic that we need to talk about. And so therefore we said, okay, let's do it on Zoom, and actually it gives us an opportunity to also have you join us from wherever you are in the world. So we want to welcome you all to be here at this Easter Rally. It's actually the 23rd Easter Rally in Matteson's history. And our speakers for this morning, are actually for the whole Easter Rally, will be Jensen and Allan Jensen. And they've been at many events, Matteson events, and it's almost like they are connected, like Luther and Melanchthon. You know, you can't say Kenneth without saying Allan. You know, it's like, so there's this connection, and we're really excited to have them join us, and they will be joining us from wherever they are as well. And but before we go and listen to these important messages for these end times, we will sing together, have a couple of songs, and then after that, Allan Jensen will have the morning worship or the morning message with us, and then after that, we will be also singing a song and then praying together in groups and asking the Lord for revival. So the song team, I would like to ask them now to come and join, and we will be singing, and you will have the words on the screen as we are singing. And this first song will be In Times Like These. In what times? In times like these, right? We are in the end times. So let's sing.
Times like these, you need a Savior. In times like these, you need an anchor. Be very sure, be very sure. Your anchor holds and grips a solid rock. His love is Jesus, yes, He's the one. This rock is Jesus, the only one. Be very sure, be very sure. Your anchor holds and grips a solid rock. In times like these, you need the Bible. In times like these, oh, be not idle. Be very sure, be very sure. Your anchor holds and grips a solid rock. This rock is Jesus, yes, He's the one. This rock is Jesus, the only one. Be very sure, be very sure. Your anchor holds and grips a solid rock. In times like these, I have a Savior. In times like these, I have an anchor. I'm very sure, I'm very sure. Your anchor holds and grips a solid rock. This rock is
Yes, Jesus is our anchor and Jesus is our sure foundation. And in troublesome times like this, He's also our shelter. A shelter in the times of storms. That's our next song.
Welcome to this program of a small series that I will have with 4 meetings. It will be about the prophecies especially, and the theme will be how to prepare for the end time. In this little seminar series we will study about Daniel chapter 9, Daniel chapter 8, Daniel chapter 11, and then we'll look, the final meeting will be about the timelines of the prophecies. But before we open the Word of God, even though I will not look into the Bible itself because I have it here on the computer in front of me, I would like us to pray that God, He will bless the study of His Word. Let's bow our heads. Father in heaven, thank you so very much that you are willing to open up the prophecies for this end time. Father, we pray that you will give us wisdom and understanding of how to understand the prophecies so that we'll be better prepared for the end time. This I pray in Jesus' name. Amen. Okay, I will look at some quotes from Ellen White that I have here, and you can follow here beside me. This is Ellen White, and she says, if you want to prepare to the end time, you have to understand Daniel and Revelation. The spiritual preparation she focuses on above everything else, and that's what we're going to look at. She says, when the books of Daniel and Revelation are better understood, believers will have an entirely different religious experience. And this is what we need for the end time, is a new religious experience. They will be given such glimpses of the open gates of heaven that heart and mind will be impressed with the character that all must develop in order to realize the blessedness which is to be the reward of the pure in heart. So she says also here that this religious experience will lead us to a development of a character that we'll need for the end time. So in order to prepare it, Ellen White suggests we study Daniel and Revelation. The next quote here says, there is need of a much closer study of the Word of God, especially should Daniel and the Revelation have attention as never before. The light that Daniel received from God was given especially for these last days. And we go on. Let us read and study the 12th chapter of Daniel. It is a warning that we shall all need to understand before the time of the end. So, according to Ellen White, it is important for us to understand Daniel and Revelation. And today we're going to look at Daniel chapter number 8. And I have set 4 questions here in the beginning. And I think many Seventh-day Adventists, they do not have a clue about these questions. The first question is, what do all the details of the vision mean? Many, they have an idea about the he-goat and about the ram, but they do not have a clear picture of all the details. I will not be able to go through every single one, but you will see today that we will cover the main details of the vision, the most important ones. And the second question that people they have, because a lot of other people, they think that the little horn in Daniel chapter 8 and Daniel chapter 7, and also what is described there in Daniel chapter 11, they believe that this is a fulfillment of a guy, a Greek leader by the name Antiochus Epiphanes. I don't know if this is correctly pronounced, but anyway, we would like to look at why is this not the person, why is it the one we believe is the little horn? And thirdly, what does the daily mean? This is a big question, and it's a very important question, because we can see that in Daniel chapter 8, the focus of the angel's question, what is about this daily? And the fourth question is, why are the 2,300 evenings and mornings not 1,150 days? Because when you have 2,300 evenings and mornings, that should be half and half, that should be 1,150 days. These and many other questions we will try to answer today. But let us begin with a quick overview over the book of Daniel, chapter number 8. When you look at the chapter, it is divided into different sequences. For example, you have the vision from verse 2 and to verse number 14. And then, if I may jump this explanation that the angel says here, then in the third one it says explaining the symbols. This is verses 20 to 26. And therefore, I suggest often that to Bible students that they have a different color for the different things that is referred in the vision and in the explanation, so they can always jump from the vision to the explanation of the vision. And the second one, it says angel is asked by the Christ to explain Daniel the vision. This is in verse 15 to verse 19. And then at the end of the whole vision, it seems that it was too much for Daniel because he fainted, and therefore everything is finished before Christ could give the last explanation to Daniel, to Gabriel. So Gabriel could give the last explanation to Daniel, and therefore we have the final explanation of the book of Daniel chapter 8 in Daniel chapter 9, and we will come to that when we come to Daniel chapter number 9. But this is a quick overview of what the book of Daniel chapter 8 is about. But let's start with the first verse. It says here, in the 3rd year of the reign of King Belshazzar, a vision appeared unto me, even unto me Daniel, after that which appeared unto me at the first. The vision that he speaks about here is, the first vision here is the vision that you have in Daniel chapter number 7. and where he had a lot of questions to the angel. And here he's getting extra information so he can better understand the vision in Daniel chapter 7. And here it says, in the 3rd year of the reign of King Belshazzar. Belshazzar, when you go to archaeology, for a long time they had no clue about that there was any person called Belshazzar. And Belshazzar, because they could not find him anywhere else than in the Bible, they thought this is the Bible you cannot trust at all. So this is simply just a figure that they have invented. But recent archaeological findings have shown that it is for sure that he lived, and it is for sure that he had the kingdom together with his father, and therefore he could only give Daniel the 3rd place in the kingdom. And if you want to read more information about this interesting things, you go to the Bible commentary, the SDA Bible commentary, and you look under Daniel chapter 8, and there you have the explanation of Belshazzar. So let's go to the vision. The vision you have from chapter 8, verse 2 and to 7. We'll look at the first part of the vision where it's speaking about the ram and the he-goat. Let me read it for you. And I saw in a vision, and it came to pass when I saw that I was at Shushan in the palace which is in the province of Allan. And I saw in a vision, and I was by the river of Ulai. This is about Iraq, Iran. Then I lifted up mine eyes and saw, and behold, there stood before the river a ram which had 2 horns. And the 2 horns were high, but one was higher than the other, and the higher came up last. I saw the ram pushing westward and northward and east and southward, so that no beasts might stand before him, neither was there any that could deliver out of his hand. But he did according to his will, and became great. You will later see, and I will come with a quote from Daniel chapter number 8 here, and verse number 20, that the Bible makes it very clear that this ram is Medo-Persia. And the 2 horns are the 2 kingdoms in Medo-Persia. It is one kingdom, but there are 2 kingdoms inside. And the Bible says here that the one horn was a little bit bigger than the other. And that is true, because the Medes were the weaker compared to the Persians. And first the Medes came up and had the leadership, and it was Darius the Mede who was the first king in Medo-Persia. And after some years, not only 2 or 3 years, something like that, he died, and then Cyrus took over as the leader of the Medo-Persian Empire. And the Persians, they became much stronger afterward than the Medes of this kingdom. But it's very clearly predicted here in the vision that the later horn should be more higher and stronger, therefore, than the first horn. And also it says that this ram was pushing in different directions. And we know that a ram, when it has to attack or defend itself, it uses its horn. And therefore it pushes in different directions. And these 3 directions that are mentioned here, this is exactly the 3 directions that the Medo-Persian Empire, they attacked and they conquered areas. For example, the Babylonian area, the Lydia area, and the Egyptian area. Exactly these 3 areas, which was to the south and to the north and to the east. So this is just to give you some information about this first kingdom that we see here represented by a ram. Now the Bible goes on in Daniel chapter 8 verse 5 to 7, and in Daniel he saw, and as I was considering, behold, an he-goat came forth from the west on the face of the whole earth. And this next kingdom, the Bible says, is Greece. And you will see in a moment that we don't have to guess about this, because it's clearly stated in Daniel chapter 8 that this is Greece. And Greece came exactly from the west and attacked the Medo-Persian Empire. And it says it touched not the ground. And the goat had a notable horn between his eyes. This is the first king that was there in the Greece Empire. And he came to the ram that had 2 horns, which I had seen standing before the river, and ran unto him in the fury of his power. and I saw him come close unto the ram, and he was moved with choler. Now, choler, that means anger. I don't know how it's pronounced, but this is how I pronounce it. Against him, and smote the ram, and brake his 2 horns, and there was no power in the ram to stand before him. But he cast him down to the ground, and stamped upon him, and there was none that could deliver the ram out of his hand. So here you have the Greek Empire that came, and the first big horn that was in the Greek Empire, this was Alexander the Great. And it was so that Alexander and the Greeks, they had been beaten by the Medo-Persians in a previous battle. And it was just barely that the Medo-Persians did not overtake the Greek Empire. This was in the time when Alexander the Great's father, he was leading. And Alexander, he was just one of the ones in the battle trying to defend the Greek borders. And for some miraculous way, it was possible for only 500 Greek men to withstand a huge Medo-Persian army. And therefore the Medo-Persians, they had to retract, and they did not conquer the Greeks. And because of this, the historians, they say that there was an animosity, an anger in the Greeks to have some kind of revenge. So this was brought from the father of Alexander the Great to his son Alexander, and then he really had this burden to beat the Medo-Persians. And therefore you have this choler names, this anger, that they went against them in this anger because they wanted to have some kind of revenge. But now let me show you that these things, they are clearly explained here in the Bible. But first I want to just tell you that the angel Gabriel was asked by Christ to explain this to Daniel. We find this in chapter 8, verse 15 to 19. After the whole vision is finished, then you have this explanation of the angel, that he is going to explain it to Daniel. Look what it says, verse 15. And it came to pass, when even I, Daniel, had seen the vision and sought for the meaning, then behold, there stood before me as the appearance of a man, and I heard a man's voice between the banks of Ulai, which called and said, Gabriel, make this man, this is Daniel, to understand the vision. So he came near where I stood, and when he came, I was afraid, and fell upon my face. But he said unto me, Understand, O son of man, for at the time of the end shall the vision be. So this angel Gabriel, he was told by Christ, as we understand here, that he should go to Daniel, and that he should explain and make him understand the vision. And then the first thing that Gabriel, he said unto Daniel was, Gabriel, this vision has to do with the end times. So this vision will start in the time of Daniel, in the Medo-Persian kingdom that will come just after Belshazzar, and then it will go all the way up to the end time of this earth's history. So we know that this vision of Daniel, that this is extremely in accordance with Daniel chapter 7, because it started in the time of Daniel and went all the way up to the second coming of Christ. So we can also imagine this will go all the way up to the end of this earth's history. And he says here in verse 18, Now as he was speaking with me, I was in a deep sleep, on my face toward the ground. Now he was there at Ulai, and then when he saw this man, he was really shocked. And I don't know if he's here trying to describe that he was fainting or whatever, or if this the translation was wrong, but I think he fainted because he saw this angel there, Gabriel. But he touched me and set me upright. And he said, Behold, I will make you know what shall be in the last end of indignation. So the second time we now hear that this vision will go all the way to the end time. And this is one of the reasons why it cannot be Antiochus Epiphanes that has the whole focus, because Antiochus Epiphanes was in way before Christ came. So and it was actually before the Romans that came. He came just before the Roman he came, the Antiochus Epiphanes. So we can just see clearly that the angel points to a far future. And he says, I will make you know what shall be in the last end of the indignation, for at the time appointed the end shall be. And this is a thing that is mentioned only a few times in the book of Daniel. This time of the end. It is mentioned 4 times in the book of Daniel. And every time we can see that this period describes the 1260 years period that Daniel has had in Daniel chapter 7. And it finishes when you have the 1260 day finish in 1798. This is when the time of the end will start. So let us now go to Daniel chapter 8 verse 20 and 21 that exactly explains that these ram and the he-goat are Medo-Persia and Greece. Look what it says. The ram which you saw, having 2 horns, are the kings of Media and Persia. Can you see? We don't have to guess. It is so clearly. And it's interesting that it's described as one kingdom, one animal, but it was 2 kingdoms in one kingdom. And the rough goat is the king of Greece. And the great horn that is between his eyes is the first king, and that is Alexander the Great. But remember, we have only looked at the first part of the vision. Now we'll go back to the beginning of Daniel chapter 8 and see the next part after the Greek Empire have conquered Medo-Persian and this great horn. Are we going to see Alexander the Great reign for another 50 years as a big king over the whole world? No, we are not, because the Bible predicted that this was not going to happen like this. Look what it says. Therefore the he-goat waxed very great. And this was Alexander the Great in an extreme quick few years. He managed to conquer the whole world. And after he conquered Babylon, he went to India and also conquered vast areas there. And then it says, and when he was strong, the great horn was broken. Alexander the Great did not have 50 years of reign. After Alexander, he had conquered the whole Greek kingdom, which is a vast kingdom. I wish I had a map I could show you here. But anyway, you can go to YouTube or to Google, and you can see there's a map over the large area that Alexander the Great he covered. And the idea is that Alexander the Great, he and his soldiers, they had a big party, of course, after such a victory. And he liked to drink alcohol. That is not a very smart idea. To drink alcohol is not very, very clever for a leader. And he loved to drink a lot, and he could drink a lot of alcohol and still be able to handle him quite well. And after he was quite drunk, he made some kind of bet with his soldiers or his generals, and then he promised he would drink a big, I think it was a big, I can't remember what it was, but it was some kind of big thing. And then he drank, I think it was several liters of wine. And of course, you don't feel so well after putting several liters of wine into the stomach. So he had to withdraw, and he became quite ill and had a fever, and he died after a few days. So Alexander the Great, he died only 32 years old on the pinnacle of his victories. And it came up 4 notable ones toward the 4 winds of heaven. This is the 4 generals of Alexander that came out of the Greek Empire, because the son of Alexander, he was too young, so he could not take over. And his brother, who actually wanted to take over, the generals, they killed his son and they killed his brother so that they could take over the kingdom. And therefore it was 4 horns that came out of this he-goat here, and not 1 big horn. And that is the 4 general of Alexander the Great. And you can see this explanation is actually given to us in verse number 22. It says, now that being broken, whereas 4 stood up for it, 4 kingdoms shall stand up out of the nation, but not in his power. This is the 4 generals. They were actually 4 separate areas. It was all Greek, but it was 4 separate areas. And it ended up, as we'll see in Daniel chapter 11, to only 2 areas. But this was in the latter part of its experience. But when we go back to the beginning of Daniel chapter 8, we have a little horn coming up. And this little horn comes up from one of the 4 corners of the earth. Let us look what it says. It says, therefore the he-goat waxed very great. And when he was strong, the great horn was broken, and for it came up 4 notable ones toward the 4 winds of heaven. That is the 4 corners of the earth. And out of one of them came forth a little horn. Let me just stop here for a moment. You see, there are 4 horns and there are 4 winds. And out of one of them, is it out of one of the 4 horns? Or is it out of one of the 4 winds? That means out of the 4 things of the earth, south, north, east, west. And it is very easy to understand this, because you can just look at the grammatical cases of this word. Come out of them. It is from the 4 winds. That is from, it was coming from the eastern part, namely it was Rome that came. And because it doesn't fit with the grammar, that is from the 4 horns. And the other explanation that the liberal churches they have, or the Catholics they have, is that this is Epiphanies that came out of this, Antiochus Epiphanes that came out of one of the horns. But the grammar says clearly it came out of one of the corners of the earth, and not out of the horns. Let us look what it says on. It says, and out of one of them came forth a little horn, which waxed exceeding great. This doesn't fit with the Antiochus Epiphanes. He was great, and then he became smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller. So he was not growing. And it came and it waxed towards the south, and towards the east, and towards the pleasant land. And the pleasant land here is Israel. So if you want to go back, if I may draw this here behind me, I can draw here. Here we have Israel, here we have Jerusalem, here we have Egypt, and here we have, this is the Nile, and here we have northern Africa. And you know, over here we have somewhere over here, it doesn't work so well. This is should have been Italy, or the foot of Italy. So it grew to the south, that is to North Africa, and to Egypt, and then it grew to the east, that is, he went towards Syria, and then it grew to the Holy Land. So it's very clear when you just go backwards that you can see you come to Italy, and it was Italy, it was Rome that came forth here. So there's no question in my mind that this is clearly describing Rome. And you also have explanation of this in verse 23. Look what it says here. Very interesting. And I'm sorry, I have not time to look up all these things, but and to show you all the Bible quotes. But this verse says the following: and in the latter time of their kingdom, when the transgressors are come to the full, a king of fierce countenance and understanding dark sentences shall stand up. These are referring to 2 prophecies given by Moses and given by Ezekiel. That there should come up one after that has a language that they would not be able to understand. And this the Hebrews, they understood quite well the Medo-Persian language, and they understood also the Greek, but they did not understand the Latin language. This was far away from the Hebrew language, and therefore it is very clearly that it's referring to here the Roman Empire. You can also find very good quotes about this and very good text of this if you want to study Uriah Smith, Daniel, and Revelation. You can download it as a PDF file from the internet. But let's go back to this little horn, because little horn, that is Rome, that comes and grows to an extremely great kingdom. This was thoroughly explained in Daniel chapter 7. So therefore, Daniel and the angel Gabriel doesn't use much time of Rome. But in Daniel chapter 8, we have more focus when this horn, from going horizontal, suddenly it goes vertical and it goes upward towards heaven. And we know that, as far as we know, that the Roman Empire never became very spiritual. So that means that that somehow in this Roman Empire it has to change into a more spiritual empire that goes upwards. And we believe that this is the papacy. And these verses from verse 10 to verse 12 describe that this is the papacy. And there is a lot of details in this, and unfortunately I cannot and I do not have time to go through every single detail here. But let's take the main details. It says here, and this little horn, it waxed great, even to the host of heaven. Can you see? It was going to the south, and it was going to the east and to the Holy Land. But now suddenly it's growing upwards, horizontal, not vertical anymore. And it cast down some of the host and of the stars to the ground and stamped upon them. So we can see that it can be, it is spiritual when it goes upwards, and it casts some of the stars. And the stars in the Bible are referring to as two things. Either it's the people of God or it is angels. And therefore you have to look in the immediate context. Does this refer to the angels that he is casting down, or does this refer to that it is the people of God? And when you go on to the explanation that comes later on in verse, I think it's verse 24 and 25, there you will see that it's clearly the saints that it's speaking about. So this power here that is described, that is attacking the saints of God's people. And this also shows that this is spiritual. This spiritual power is a spiritual power in this world, but it is a spiritual power that is killing God's saints, exactly like we saw the horn from Daniel chapter number 7. It was killing and fighting and making war against the saints. So already here we can resonate with these things. When we go on, it says here about this little horn that we believe is the papacy, because all the details that is written of here, it fits only to the papacy. It says, yeah, he magnified himself. You saw exactly the same thing in Daniel chapter 7, that he spoke great words as the Most High and magnified himself. So we see this similarities. They are totally the same when we compare the horn from Daniel chapter 7 and the little horn that is growing here towards heaven in Daniel chapter 8. It says, yeah, he magnified himself even to the prince of the host. And the prince of the host, we will see later, this is the prince of prince, which we believe is Jesus Christ. So we can see that this spiritual power will even magnify himself above Jesus Christ. And this is also explained later in verse 24 and 25, as we'll see it in a moment. And it says here, and by him, so by this little horn, the daily sacrifice was taken away. I have to stop here. The daily sacrifice. Can you see? Sacrifice is in, I don't know what you call it in cursive, it's called in Danish, but I don't know what the language is in English, but it's not in straight letters. And that's because they have introduced this word into the text. It is not in the original. There you only have the word daily. And actually, this is the only place in the whole Bible where they decided to translate this word daily, with daily. All the other places, it is mainly in connection with the sanctuary. And there it is always describing how Jesus, he will be working continuously in the Sabbath. This word daily means continuous. So continuously he will work in our behalf in the sanctuary. This word comes up again and again and again when you read about the sanctuary. So why they have not translated it in as continuous here, so you can see that it has to do with the sanctuary, because in the next sentence, right, we can see that the word sanctuary is already here. Look what it says. It says, and by him the daily was taken away, and the place of his sanctuary was cast down. So already we have this word daily that was always used in connection with the sanctuary, and there it always was connected to the continuous mediation of the priest in the sanctuary. So the papacy here should take away Christ's mediation in the sanctuary. And this is exactly what they have done with the Mass. You know, we believe in the New Testament it says that you can come directly to Jesus Christ. You don't have to go through a priest. Every person can come directly to Jesus Christ. And therefore, the Bible describes that in this way we are all priests. In this sense, we are all priests. So we can go directly to Jesus Christ, and we don't have to go through a mediator. But the Roman Catholic Church, they teach no, it's not like this. You have to have a Catholic priest in order to be a mediator between you and God. So it says here, and by him the daily was taken away, and the place of his sanctuary was cast down. And in this way, you see, the whole sanctuary in heaven is now out of order now. So it was actually cast down to this earth. And an host was given him against the daily by reason of transgression, and it cast down the truth to the ground, and it practiced and prospered. Here is describing that it had a host that it had control over, and this was God's people. It was in full control over all of Europe, and so God's people, they had to flee out in the mountains. They could not do away with that Jesus was not the mediator. They could not do away with that Jesus. They could not come directly to Jesus, and therefore they had to flee high up in the mountains, in the Piedmont valleys, in order to flee the Catholic Church. So this is all described here in this prophecy. Very interesting. Here I wanted to show you this one of these places, these many places where you find this word daily, or the word continuous or continually, in connection with the sanctuary. This is here in Exodus 29 verse 38. Says, now this is that which you shall offer upon the altar, 2 lambs of the first year, day by day. Can you see? It should be continually. And here you have at the end this exactly the same word, continually. So Jesus, he is day by day, he is coming with his blood, and when we ask for forgiveness, we can have forgiveness for our sins. And this is what this daily sacrifice was a picture of. And this, the papacy totally took away, so that we have to be dependent on man to have forgiveness for our sins. So here in Daniel chapter 8, verse 24 and 25, you had exactly the explanation, so you can see that this is describing the papacy. Look what it says. This is the little horn further explains in its development more horizontal. It says, vertical. I say horizontal. I mixed it around. Sorry. And is his power, it says, shall be mighty, but not by his own power. The papacy got all its power from Rome. It did not conquer anything. It got all its power from Rome. So therefore it was not by his own power. And he shall destroy wonderfully, and shall prosper and practice, and shall destroy the mighty and the holy people. And through his policy also he shall cause craft. And this word craft means deceit. So the papacy should use policy and deceit in order to get his power, to prosper in his hand. And he shall magnify himself in his heart, and by peace shall destroy many. He shall also stand up against the Prince of Princes, this is Jesus Christ, but he shall be broken without hand. Here it's clearly that he's going after the saints, and he's going after Jesus Christ and his mediation. So it's very interesting how the papacy totally fulfills this prophecy about the horn from Daniel chapter number 8. But let us continue the study, because after this vision has come, there is now a conversation between some angels, and they are asking about how should this be understood. Look what it says in verse 13. Then I heard one saint speaking, and another saint said unto that certain which spake, how long shall be the vision? Now he asked, how long shall be the vision? And the vision, you can see, started with these the ram and the he goat, and it goes all the way up to the end time we hear from Gabriel that he explained to Daniel. And these 2,300 evening and mornings, they go all the way up to the end time, as far as we can see. So we can see that he asked about the whole vision. He doesn't ask only about the horn, because some they say it's only about the horn he's asking, but he asked about the whole vision. And the vision starts from the time of the Medo-Persians, and that is because we start the 2,300 morning and evenings in the year of the Medo-Persians. Okay, look what it says. How long shall be the vision concerning the daily, remember, no sacrifice, concerning the continuous, concerning this, that the mediation will be taken away, and the transgression of desolation, to give both the sanctuary and the host to be trodden underfoot. So the sanctuary and God's people should be trodden underfoot. And then he answers. And he said unto me, unto 2,300 days. And here it says days, but in the Hebrew it says evening and mornings. Then shall the sanctuary be cleansed. Therefore some people say this is 1150 days, not 200. But it says evening and mornings. But the fact is, evening and mornings, that is a way to describe a day. When you go to the creation in Genesis, in chapter 1, you see, and it was evening and it was morning the first day, and evening and morning the second day. So the 2,300 days, that's why I had translated this as days, because this is the meaning of it. And then it says, then shall the sanctuary be cleansed. Now, this was said to Daniel. And Daniel, he knew the prophecies of Jeremiah. And he knew that Jeremiah said that only for 70 years the sanctuary should be destroyed. After 70 years, the Jews should be allowed to come home, and they should rebuild the Jerusalem and temple and everything. And now suddenly he hears that first after 2,300 years, this is when the sanctuary should be cleansed. I don't know if you can imagine how stressed poor Daniel he became because of this. And you can see that in verse 26, Gabriel, he said to Daniel, and the vision of the evening and the mornings, which was told, is true. Wherefore shut you up the vision, for it shall be for many days. This is something far out in the future. And if it was only 1150 days or 2,300 days, it will not be found in the future. This is only 7-8 years, nothing more than this. So in other words, Daniel, he understood that this is prophetic days, that this will run all the way from the Medo-Persian kingdom and all the way up to the end of time. Does this mean 2,300 years before the sanctuary can be raised up again? And this was such a shock for Daniel. So he actually fainted, and we can read that in verse 27. But let us now go quickly to these 4 questions, because I hope you can already see we have already been coming close to the explanation of the 4 questions. The first question, what does all the details of the vision mean? I hope you can see, we have looked at the text, and then we looked at the explanation that Gabriel gave to Daniel. And the text and the explanation makes it very clear for us. It was Medo-Persia, it was Greece, it was Rome, it was the papacy. It's very, very clear that this is the interpretation of these things. So these are the details that we have already described. The second point here, why is the little horn not Antiochus Epiphanes? We have already seen this, that when you have to come to a conclusion in prophecy, all the details have to fit on the one you want to see is the fulfillment. That's why when you have you sum up all the different characteristics of this horn that they believe is Antiochus Epiphanes, that maybe only half of them Antiochus Epiphanes he fulfills, but the papacy, they fulfill all the points that you have of the horn, and therefore it cannot be Antiochus Epiphanes. And number 3, what does the daily mean? And we have already seen that this is referring to the mediation of Christ in the sanctuary, that this was taken away by the papacy. And number 4, we have also already seen that the evening and mornings, this is referring to a day. This is the way the Bible counts a day. And it was evening and morning, the first day and the second day. Therefore, it is correctly translated in the King James Version that the 2,300 evening and mornings are 2,300 days. And we believe it is prophetic days. Here you have the answers again, so I don't have to, I have gone through them all. So I can just go to the last verse in the Bible. So Gabriel, he was told that he should explain the whole vision, make Daniel understand the vision. But when he heard this about the 2,300 days, and in the mind of Daniel, he understood this is years. So does this mean that Jerusalem will be destroyed for 2,300 years and will not be able to come back before after 2,300 years? This was just too much for Daniel. So he fainted and he was sick certain days, and therefore he could never have the finishing part. Because Daniel, he was told an explanation of everything. The ram, Medo-Persia, the he-goat, Greece, the horn, first was Rome, then the papacy. Then he heard that the 2,300 days will end far out in the future, but he did not have a starting point for the 2,300 days. And therefore, we find this starting point in Daniel chapter number 9. And this we will look at in our next meeting.
The future before it happened, actually. And so we're really looking forward to hearing more messages about the end times and how to prepare for them as well. If you have any questions throughout this time, we actually have a way to be able to show you, or for you to be able to write questions to Allan and Kenneth Jørgensen, and they will be happy to answer those in the final message or the final meeting in the end of the Easter rally. To be able to go there, we have, if you go to slide.do, I think we will have it on the PowerPoint here, and the code, as you could imagine, is 1844. So if you go on that webpage, you can write in your questions, but you can not only write in your questions, but you can vote which questions you think are nicest or that you think should really be answered. And so it's an interactive platform where you can put up the vote of which questions should be answered by Kenneth and Allan, and that you will have in the end of Easter Rally. Now I would like to encourage all of us to join in prayer. We want to make sure, or we want to also have prayer as a central part of this Easter Rally, how to prepare for the end time, because that is the connection that we have with God. And we do have also a quote, you remember this one: a revival of true godliness among us is the greatest and most important or most urgent of all our needs. And so therefore I want to encourage that we will have, if you're at home, if you're alone, take some time in prayer. If you're here on Zoom, then we can go into breakout sessions after the song that we will be singing together. And the song that we will be singing is called Take My Life and Let It Be Consecrated Wholly to Thee. So we want to give our lives completely to Him, and we will sing that song, and then we will go into prayer, and you can do that from wherever you are. So let's sing.
Take my hands and let them move.
Yes, and now we will take some time here especially in Zoom, everyone that is here with us in Zoom, to pray. We have the promise in Matthew 18, right? Where 2 or 3 are gathered, there God is among us. He is with us. And so we want to go into prayer groups together. If you're on Zoom, we will split you into breakout sessions of 4 or 5 people, and then introduce yourselves when you're there, and then have a prayer together. And especially let us pray for revival, and let us pray about what we also heard, the messages, and pray that God will prepare our hearts in this time, and we would experience a personal revival. We will leave the breakout rooms open, so you can take as much time as you would like, but it's up to you in the groups how long you would like to pray, and that will be the last thing that we do. So you will you can end in the groups, and then that's it. There is also a possibility that you can come back into the living room, you could say, or the room here, and we will leave it open until another hour, but you will, whenever you're finished in the groups, you can close there together. Also, just before we go into those groups, remember that you can share these meetings with your friends. That is for the link matteson.no/live. That's what will be live transmitted to Facebook, and then we will also upload it on YouTube later. So you can share that with others, and if you know people, participants, or you have some alumni, or your friends, or rather your family, you can also invite them to the Zoom. And then we will have, obviously, as you know from the program, an evening meeting starting at 7 o'clock. So you're welcome to join us for that with Kenneth Jørgensen. And don't forget, if you have any questions, put them on Slido. So when you go now, we will put you into breakout rooms, and then you would just have to click accept, and then you will go into groups of 3 or 4 and 5, and then introduce yourselves and pray. Let us take some time in prayer and ask God to lead us and guide us. Thank you for joining this morning, and we'll see you tonight. Bye-bye.